Good evening and welcome to Trojans Talk on Tap for the USC versus Washington game preview. Very happy to have here a friend of mine, Sergeant Pickles, a very avid University of Washington fan supporter, and you'll follow him on Twitter at Sergeant Pickles 13. So
Yep.
Pickles, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
How's it going? Happy to be here. It's give this a go the second time around, but I think it'll go a lot smoother.
Yeah, this is the premiere tailgate episode, if you will, preview, and we had some technical difficulties at the beginning with some feedback, but we've hopefully modified that and made the changes. It sounds 100% better. So
Yep.
appreciate all the viewers that were on before. Apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll fix these in the future, and but let's get going right now. And again, as I explained earlier, this is a tailgate type of preview. If you're expecting to have sports writers or national YouTubers that are going to be chiming in on the University of Washington USC game, this is not the show for you. This is a tailgate atmosphere. Imagine Sergeant Pickles is coming down to the Coliseum. He's with some USC friends, and he's hanging out at LBC's tailgate. So this is the type of banter you're going to have. An hour or two before the game, you're having a cold beer, and we're going to talk about the football game. So that's the atmosphere. Hope everybody is joining us, is going to have a cold beverage, their favorite beverage. And so let's start with that, Pickles. What are you drinking right now? What are you drinking in Seattle that LBC can't get in LA?
Drinking in Seattle is one of my favorites. I order it. You can get it almost everywhere around here on tap, and that's for good reason. This is Mac and Jack's Brewing, African Amber, not Alaskan Amber. It's delicious. It's exactly what it says on the cans, 5.8% amber, and it's smooth drinking. And pretty much every restaurant around here you can get it on tap, and it's an old reliable. Brewed in Redmond, Washington.
Fantastic. And I've got from Torrance, California. It's called Smog City Brewing. It's California Love. First time I've ever had this beer. It is a double hoppy red ale, 7.7%. It's brewed with Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir is the color of blood. And if you take a look at that, kind of looks like an amber red. And USC is going to have to shed some blood on defense if they're going to have a chance against your Huskies. But so that's appropriate here. And 7.7 means that we're going to score touchdowns and hopefully not give up 7.
It's a little spicy, I'll give you that.
Yeah, this is
Cheers.
Cheers. This is deceivingly phenomenal. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a double hoppy red ale, but you can taste the Pinot Noir. Excellent beer. So welcome to the tailgate. Let's get into it. This is a much anticipated game. The college football playoffs just came out, Pickles. College football playoff rankings just came out, Pickles, yesterday. Mm-hmm. Washington is number 5, USC number 20. There are 6 teams from the Pac-12 that are in the top 20, with Oregon number 6, the other significant team. Tell me what you thought about those college football rankings when they came out yesterday.
My personal feeling about rankings is they shouldn't come out until the last 4 weeks of the season. I'm a little old school like that, but it is what it is. I mean, everyone comes out with their power rankings or who's most deserving, whose record is best, and I appreciate Mark on Boys College Football, the top 25 that actually makes sense. And they all, at the end of the day, 90% of them are there to generate clicks. I actually think this one is no different. They literally have a show on TV just to showcase the rankings and get everyone talking about it. The Huskies are exactly where they were in the AP poll, and I think that's about right. It doesn't make a difference to me in the sense that you beat Oregon, you put that hurdle out of the way, and I know all the chatter's been, Washington struggled the last couple weeks, Oregon's been really good. Did they have a fluky win? But everything's still in front of you. For me, this is USC week. That's all that matters. Because if you keep marching on, if the Huskies It's pretty common sense. They win every game going forward. They're in the playoff. There's no question about it. There's even a strong argument, depending on if they had one loss and who it's to, they're still in the playoff. So I try not to get too wrapped up in rankings, but we'll give it a try. Well,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun sports talk, I guess.
Well, these are rankings that are significant. I think you brought it up, Pickles. Is that um, we're at week 9 in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Washington's 8-0. USC played week 0, so USC is 7-2. You know who you are at this point, and so these rankings are more significant than, let's say, preseason rankings that come out for the AP or the coaches poll, or even in week 1, 2, 3, or 4. You kind of know who you are. And that being said, let's take a look at let's look at defense, scoring defense, because we know about the offense. Both teams are just in the top 10 in offense. We'll get into that, but defense, I think, is what's going to be something to look at in this game. Who can stop who? But the NCAA scoring defense through last week, University of Washington's number 33, giving up 20.6 a game, 6 points a game, and USC's number 109, giving up 32.6 points a game. And,
tough sledding.
Yeah, it's tough sledding. And if you look at the stats, yeah, it's there's a disparity there. What are your thoughts on University of Washington's defense? And getting into it, what are the things that Washington has to do to win this game, in your opinion?
Just my general impressions with the Husky defense is that they're improved from last year. I think people had high expectations going into the season. And you saw a lot of younger guys, maybe new positions, guys that were backup players that are now starters. And it feels like they've kind of grown into their role. When they're at their best, when they're absolutely firing, which I think you saw at times during the Oregon game, they're a top 1 or 2 defense in this conference. And when they're not, you see what happened against ASU and Stanford. Well, they played well against ASU, who's terrible, but they only gave up 7 points. I mean, they gave up nothing. But you had some bend not breaking against Stanford where they'd allow big chunk plays, they'd allow passes down the field. And a lot of it to me is tackling in the secondary. Their coverage skills seem to be really good. They're more or less covering up routes. But just a guy breaks loose or even a runner coming through to the second level, he's turning a 5-yard run into a 10-yard run or a 15-yard run. And it's just those little margins of wrapping up tackling. And I think that, as I said, it's been up and down. Last 2 weeks, I think it's been kind of marginal, but they can, when they're at their best, they can hang with anybody.
Yeah, and that's the course of a season, right? You have different teams, different matchups. You've played 8 games. USC's played 9, and it's a broader sample size. And you're going to have your good games. You're going to have your bad games. USC's coming off of a 1-point win over Cal. A win's a win.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you just mentioned, we saw that Washington goes on the road at Stanford. Many people thought Washington was going to boat race Stanford, yours truly included. And it came down to less than 2 minutes. It was a 2-point game. So it shows you that nothing is guaranteed. You got to play the game. And you go down to Tucson earlier when Arizona was just coming around, and you win by a touchdown. Tucson's not an easy place to play, much less win. And then
Husky fans will have nightmares about playing in the desert. That's been our bogey team for I don't know how long. Tony likes to bring it up, and he tries to make it sound friendly, but I think the Huskies haven't won in Tempe since the Rose Bowl season, 2001. It's been that long.
You were actually playing Arizona, not ASU and Tempe, but you were
both. Both places have been horrible.
Okay. Well, yeah. And there's certain places where it's tough to play. And obviously USC has challenges in Corvallis and Pullman. Well documented. And they've had challenges in Seattle historically. It's a tough place to play. But
everyone's got those bogey teams. You tell any Oregon fan about playing Stanford, and it gives them flashbacks.
Sure, exactly. They don't want to admit it, but We all know.
Nope.
We saw it. I think the kicker's name is Alejandro Maldonado, and there
That
was
sounds right.
two misses for two possible national championships. Um, if you didn't know that, Husky fans, you do now. Being that you have your border little brother there to the south. But anyhow, getting back to with Washington, some challenges. Obviously, USC's had challenges on the road. They've had challenges with the defense. You brought up some great points about Washington, some of the challenges they have on defense. And if they're going to win this game, where does Washington have to be successful?
I think there's a number of factors, but for me, it's the offense returning back to that on time, on schedule where it's more like you expect them to score every drive, and sometimes they don't. Obviously, penalties happen, they punt it away, but you're almost expecting a touchdown every drive, and it's kind of that. It's a very odd feeling to be let down that you only got 3 points out of a 10 play, 80-yard drive. It's a strange feeling, but that's the offense we walked into to start the season. And it's more or less what we've seen up until the past couple weeks. And credit to the guys at Locked On Huskies. I'm just saying this is a factor, not trying to make excuses. You put it out all on the field. Apparently, the flu has been totally widespread in the team, and especially with Penix. At certain points the last couple of games, he was barfing into a trash can on the sidelines and getting IVs during the game. I don't know how much that contributed to the overall offense not clicking because it was just really poor against Arizona State, and then it would have some success. I mean, they put up points in the end against Stanford, but it was herky jerky. It wasn't smooth and connect. You didn't have these drives where you're just constantly chunking out plays. It was penalties coming backwards and random things happening, and then a pick in the end zone, which controversial no call. We see that with Pac-12 refs all the time, but it just felt disjointed. And I'm wondering if possibly getting over that illness, both with Penix and the team overall, means you see that continuity on offense where they just feel like a tidal wave just marching down the field.
Well, these two teams are very similar. Um,
Yeah.
from an offensive standpoint, defensively, what you had mentioned, sometimes Washington breaks down in secondary coverage, and those 5, 10 yard plays go for chunk plays, 20, 30 yards. USC has similar issues. Last week, Lincoln Riley reportedly had pneumonia just after um, the game against Utah, where USC lost 34-32 at the Coliseum, a tough loss.
Yeah.
And he missed practices on Monday and Tuesday. And he didn't want to affect the team. You'd mentioned that the flu has affected Penix and other members of the team. So, yeah, this kind of happens. You get a change in
Yeah.
season from summer to fall, and there's things that happen in the
Yeah.
locker room. It's just they spread. So it's part of the game. It's part of your depth, obviously. But getting into where I see USC having some success against Washington is they have to run the ball. And they haven't really run the ball very well, USC. Whether there's been questions on the play calling, I've been calling out Lincoln Riley. How can you not run the ball against the University of Colorado when you played Colorado in
Mm-hmm.
Boulder, when at that point Colorado had given up 200 yards rushing a game in 3 of their 4 games?
They were a paper tiger all along, and I called it from the beginning.
Yeah, you did. And when you have Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones, two senior, laden running backs, veteran running backs, and you don't go in there, and yes, USC was up 34-14 in the first half, but there was 2 instances where the defense turned the ball over. They got an interception within the 25-yard line of Colorado, and then they blocked a punt and got the ball
Yeah.
within the 25-yard line. You run the ball down their throats and score. Each time USC scored within about a minute, but threw 3 passes to 1 rush. And so it's like, why aren't you running the ball? Last week, they couldn't run the ball against Utah, but last week in the victory against Cal, they ran the ball. They ran the ball and they stuck with it in the second half. Both Lloyd and Jones combined for nearly 100 yards in the second half alone, with 2 fourth quarter touchdowns. If USC is successful against running the ball against Washington, it's going to improve their chances for victory.
Yeah.
How is Washington? How is their run defense this year? What has been their run defense these 8 games?
I'd say it's been average to good at times, and we've had some injuries along the defensive line. That was another one I wanted to talk about later on for keys to the game. But they've had injuries along the defensive line. You got a guy like Braylon Trice, who preseason All-American type guy, and everyone expected big sack numbers out of. And I think part of the problem for him is as there's been injuries on the defensive line, he gets double teamed, he gets triple teamed, and it takes him a big time impact pass rusher out, which obviously, the run game feeds off of all of it. Bucky Irving had success for Oregon, and I couldn't believe they went away from it and put it in Bo Nix's hands. I am convinced of this. This is my opinion. I think Lanning wanted Nix to have a Heisman moment and put one over on the Huskies, but he's checked down Bo. He's extremely efficient. He's talented. He can make the throws as long as they're 15 yards or less. That's what he's good at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that Bucky Irving, he wasn't necessarily gashing them, but it was 5 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 1 for 10, 5 yards. It was basically no negative plays, and I don't know why they went away from that. So the Husky, you can run on them if you're clever with your scheme, and it's actually kind of the thing that worries me most about the game I had circled, not to skip ahead, was actually Oregon State playing them on the road because they just run the ball until you die. That's what they're all about. The thing that I think might bolster Washington is that they're getting back one of their really good run-stopping defensive linemen. He's been out since, I want to say, the Arizona game, so quite a few weeks, and that's one of the best names to hear announcers try and butcher. Tuli Letuli Nasanoa. He's from Tuli Letuli Nasanoa. Yeah, defensive lineman. He's from NorCal. He's a Cali guy. But he's solid inside. He can eat up blockers, and he really kind of helps contain that control, that center of the line of scrimmage, so they're not gashing you straight up the middle. That's not to say I think USC can still have success doing that. And what actually worries me most is if you get that, you get them sucked up to the line and get them really focusing on stopping the run up the middle. Is Caleb able to roll out and make plays? Because that's, to me, where he's most dangerous. If you keep him in the pocket, he can still hurt you, but you can at least kind of keep track and keep tabs on everything moving around. When he breaks the pocket, he can run himself. He can chuck it down the field. That's when he is at his absolute best. And I think that's really what they're going to focus on is stopping the run and then containing that pocket.
Well, that was pretty phenomenal what you just said there, Sergeant Pickles. The pronunciation on the defensive line, I'm not going to even try. But that's what you get here on Trojans Talk on Tap on the LBC Trojan channel, is that you have passionate fans that know who their players are. Their names are not going to be butchered by a sports writer or YouTuber. So that is what you get here on the channel. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Share it with friends. Bring them to the tailgate. But this is what you're going to get on the channel. Your preview show. We're going to enjoy a cold one. We're going to talk about the game like we're just at the game, ready to walk into the stadium. And Sergeant Pickles is here repping the University of Washington Huskies. Bow down, as they say. You know what they say, Sergeant Pickles?
Yeah, that's what they say. Even when we go 0-12, you still bow down to Washington. That's right.
And the Trojans fight on. So for all the college football fans out there that maybe are not familiar with the Pac-12, we got about probably 12 hours left in this conference before it's a show. It's done. It's a wrap.
Yep.
University of Washington and USC are two of the most historical programs in the conference. Yes, there's UCLA. Yes, there's Oregon. But there's two daddies in the conference that have won national championships in the last 35 years, and that's Don James, Huskies, and University of Southern California Trojans. And one of the things that one of the great games that recently happened was in 2016. And the game was on a Friday night. It was up in Seattle, and University of Washington was 4-0 at the time. I mean, I'm sorry, number 4 at the time. They were 9 and
Yep.
0, and enrolled in Clay Helton's 6-3 USC Trojans. And not many people gave USC a chance. I think Game Day was there.
I believe so. Yeah, that was the last game day in Seattle.
Check that. I think the game was on a Saturday night. I think I said Friday night, but Game Day was there.
It could be. It wasn't on a Friday. The last big time like Friday game was when we played Stanford in 2016. That was the Christian McCaffrey game. So you could be right. Yeah, I don't think it was Friday though. I think you're right on the game day. And Lee Corso, I want to say, picked the Huskies, and there was something. I could have this wrong. This is one I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's like every time Corso picked the Huskies, they lost up until this year or something like that. So it was like a bad omen.
Yeah. And that was an amazing game. You had Sam Darnold. That was the team, and USC went on to win 26-13. Pretty much shut down Washington at Husky Stadium. And
Yep.
but if you recall, college football fans, Washington went on to go to the college football playoff. It was one of the 2 teams that have made the college football playoff in the college football playoff era, along with Oregon. And USC went on to play in the Rose Bowl and beat Penn State. So both of the teams had successful seasons, each in their different own way. And who knows what we're going to be seeing here, Sergeant Pickles, this year with Washington ranked number 5 in the college football playoffs, 8-0. USC, 20, coming off a couple consecutive tough losses at Notre Dame, against Utah. And in order for USC to be successful, like I'd mentioned, they got to run the ball. And defensively, similar to what you mentioned about Washington, USC has been challenged in their secondary. A few guys in the secondary do not turn their hips quick enough, and they are slow to make plays. They are handsy, holding, interfering. There's a lot of pass interference calls, holding calls, where they are not playing the ball, they are playing the receiver because they're late. And so that's something to look for. And then how much pressure can the defense get? Bear Alexander was missing for the first half of that Cal game. Second half, he made a difference. Eric Gentry at linebacker hasn't been playing much this year. Had a great first half of last year. I said it on my post-game wrap-up with Cal, is USC's pretty tight-lipped about injuries. I don't believe Eric Gentry is injured, but the fact that he hasn't been on the field as much, that's coaching malpractice, because that guy had 2 pass deflections, an interception, and 6 tackles. In the second half, he was the difference motivating the team to beat Cal. And they had wholly different defensive contribution. So whether that in the first half was because they were playing Alex Grinch's scheme, and the second half they just said, hey, screw it. We think Grinch is going to get fired. These are just my words, my opinion. And they went and played like the talent that they have. Okay. And they made plays. They balled out. So that is something to look at, Sergeant Pickles, is USC has nothing to lose. They're playing at home. They got the crowd. They're playing with house money. And Washington has been playing tight. So tell me, do you think Washington has some pressure given their ranking, where they're at? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that under previous coaches, under Chris Peterson, I saw games like you're saying against USC where I think the pressure would get to them and they weren't necessarily able to overcome it. They've had a tendency, and this has been through the last maybe decade, multiple coaches, they play up to their opponent and they play down to their opponent. And Kalen DeBoer, I think, has kept them even keel. And despite the fact the last 2 weeks have been pretty tough, other than the final result, in previous regimes, I genuinely believe that those are games they lose. Even the Chris Peterson, I think those are games they lose. and his mental fortitude is that, and teaching that to the team has been the difference maker. And he's been, that's kind of been his personality. He's an excited, fiery guy, but he's very even keeled. You don't see him blowing up on the sideline or doing all sorts of crazy stuff a la Jimmy Lake. But yeah, I definitely think there's ways that he and Ryan Grubb can scheme to really attack that secondary, and the receivers are getting healthy. It looks like Jalen McMillan, who's their number two, is a go, and you can't double cover everybody, and there's always someone open. Scheming correctly, so it's kind of a pick your poison scenario when UW has all four guys out there that they trust. And like you're saying about the secondary, maybe they don't swivel and they're kind of playing the man. You can hold and drag down Roma Dunze all you want. The dude is almost 220 and he's about 6'3". You're not stopping him if he doesn't want you to. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they do to try and cover him. Because what ends up happening is you try and cover Roma Dunze over the top. You have Jalen Polk or Jeremy Bernard running routes under the middle, and they're just snatching them and turning upfield for 15 yards. So it's just if you don't want to give up the big bomb, that's fine. It'll be death by a million paper cuts right up the middle.
And you just hit it on the head. It's going to be which defense stands out, because USC has the same type of arsenal that Washington is going to have to face. What are you going to do? Are you going to go ahead and how are you going to try to cover Brendan Rice? How are you going to try to cover Zachariah Branch in the slot? You got to account for Marshawn Lloyd in the backfield. Is he going to run the ball? Is he going to be a quick outlet for a dump off pass and run for 40 yards? How are you going to go ahead and stop a Deuce Robinson at 6'4"? We haven't seen much of Deuce, but this is a game where, hey, you might see the Deuce get loose. And then you got Jacoby Lane in the red zone. He's a freshman at 6'5", hasn't played much. But these are probably players that perhaps Lincoln Riley is saving for this game. And, oh, by the way, Taj Washington cooking with spice with his Victoria Salsa NIL deal. Taj Washington's been on fire. And then they'd be utilizing Lake McCree at the tight end as well, more so than they've been utilizing the tight end last year. So there's a lot of weapons that, like chess pieces, it's going to be drive by drive, play by play. Which defense can make adjustments, especially at halftime? This is going to be a fascinating game. And really, we don't know what's going to happen. That's why we're talking smack at the tailgate, drinking our beer, because you're going to throw out all these statistics. They're not going to make a difference. It's going to be who's going to step up and who's going to make the play. And the fact that the game is at the Coliseum brings joy to my heart, Sergeant Pickles, because if this game was in Seattle, I would not give USC a chance. After last debacle, the second half brought Trojan fans some hope that, look, there's some life, there's some heart. And my God, maybe Lincoln Riley's not going to be stubborn. See what happens, Lincoln Riley, when you run the goddamn ball? You keep the other defense off balance because they don't know if it's going to be run or pass. And that keeps that window open a little bit longer. It's a little wider. And Caleb Williams can go execute and dissect like a surgeon.
He's absolutely capable of it.
And Penix can do the same thing. So that's what's fascinating. It's like, you know what? You better get that 7 points because if you get 3, it ain't going to be enough, right?
What's crazy is I think there's genuinely a world where this game is like low 20s scores for both teams, and there's a world where this game both are touching 50, and both are not that far apart. It's that thin of a margin because both quarterbacks have been capable of absolutely amazing games and can drop points on anybody, and both have shown their weaknesses where if they're not on that day and they're not executing, they can be taken advantage of. I mean, Notre Dame did it to Caleb. A lot of that was generated by pass rush, but it's all goes together. I had never seen him flustered like that until he played Notre Dame. I was actually surprised that it affected him so much.
Well, the offensive line failed completely in that game, and they didn't run the ball. they wouldn't establish, whether they couldn't or they wouldn't, I don't know. But you had multiple penalties by multiple players. It just was it was not the right situation. Playing in South Bend is always a challenge, and
Hmm.
it was the ultimate challenge that day. But let's get into some predictions here. We'll get some score predictions. I'm going to say right now, whoever has the fewest amount of turnovers is going to win this game, because if you get the plus in the defense in the turnover category, you are going to win. So it's up to the defense. But give me your prediction on the score here, Pickles.
So I'm gonna lean on my almanac of Alex Grinch to see, because if you remember, he was at a certain school right across the state from us. We know him well. And if I check my Farmer's Almanac of football scores, the last three times the Washington Huskies played an Alex Grinch defense, the final score was 45 to 10, 45 to 17, and 41 to 14.
Ooh,
I don't think it will be that big a spread. However, they know how to attack him. New regime, new coaching staff. He plays the same, he's done the same trick everywhere he goes. And if you can find that weakness, you just pound it over and over and over until it's done. My final prediction, because I think this is the game where UW steps up to the challenge. We got a lot of California guys, and everyone knows if there's a California guy not playing for SC, they want to beat SC. That's just how it's always been.
yep.
I think this is the game where they get healthy, they get right. I'm going to go 37-31 Huskies.
37-31 Huskies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's excellent analysis, Sergeant Pickles. And tell us, give us why the name Sergeant Pickles. I understand you were in the Marine Corps.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps a long time ago, and the Pickles part, it's not as clever as people think. The Pickles part, my first name is Dylan, and my family, since I was a little kid, because of Dill Pickle, they've called me the nickname Pickle my entire life, and I was like, it's been embarrassing long enough. I'm just going to take it and run with it, and I think more people know me by that now than by my real name, so it's all good.
Hey, thank you for your service. It's awesome. The Marines, hoorah! And
Oh, yeah.
I like your prediction. I think it's fair. Um, and see, you're not going to get that anywhere else but here. He brings up the analysis of Alex Grinch versus Washington State. That is critical information. I didn't know that fact. And now
Yeah,
you're
we
saying,
smoked him
well,
every time we played him. It again, Wazoo talent, USC talent, big difference, but
yes,
they've had his number every time.
yeah. So that's a great point. And the way I look at it is it's going to come down to turnovers. And I think USC's defense, that second half, they just said, you know what? We've got the talent. We're going to step up. We're going to make plays. We don't have to take this anymore. We've been beleaguered and berated this whole year, and we're better than that. And part of that was getting Bear Alexander back in there because he was suspended for that first half. And there's a lot of talent on this team. Like you just mentioned, hey, that was Washington State. This is USC. You got Bear
Yep.
Alexander, Anthony Lucas. You've got Kalen Bullock. You got Damani Jackson. You got Tackett Curtis at linebacker. You've got Eric Gentry. There's a lot of talent on this team. I know I'm leaving out guys, but they're going to make a stand. And the Coliseum is going to be rocking 4:30. It's a sellout. It's going to be electric.
Is it? I hope so.
This is a knockout round. This is a heavyweight. Caleb Williams versus Michael Penix. I see it. USC winning the turnover margin and winning 41-31. That's where.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
You got 37-31. I got 41-31.
I think both of us are on the same page, and if I feel like you would join me in this, I don't think it would surprise us if either team wins. I think it would surprise me if it's a blowout either way, unless crazy things happen, crazy turnovers.
Sure.
But in every standard game, I think just like you're saying, 10 points or less margin either way is going to be darn close. And I do think it comes down to the last, almost kind of who wants it more in the fourth quarter, who wants it at the very end to put away that final dagger, like Penix did with Oregon. if you can get another moment like that. And Caleb's just as capable. If he can find that magic moment, maybe it's a Heisman moment. I'll leave you with my one fun stat of the night. I've brought up some fun ones. You ready for this?
Oh, let's bring it,
Kalen,
Pickles.
Kalen DeBoer, I would like you to guess his head coaching record in the month of November all time.
And how many years has he been a head coach?
I think he's been a head coach. He was during the COVID seasons. There's a few less games. I'll give you a total. The total games he's played in November is 28 games. I would like you to say how many of those you think he has won.
Okay, so as a head coach, he's coached 28 games in November. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
I'm going to say Kalen DeBoer's 25-3.
He has lost one game.
Wow.
In the month of November in his entire head coaching career. He's 27-1. And that was when he was at Fresno playing Boise. That is the only time he has ever lost in November as a head coach. He knows how to get it done when it matters most.
That is a great stat. And I think
I stole that from Locked On Huskies. Those guys are awesome on the podcast, by the way. Locked On Huskies, good guys.
You heard that from Sergeant Pickles. Locked On Huskies. Make sure you check them out. I think that's also the same stat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trojans. But I think Pete Carroll, in his 9 years at USC, was 27-1. We used to call it no loss November. And now Lincoln Riley, you came to USC to win national championships. That's what you said. And you watched Pete Carroll back in the day.
You don't got to tell me about Pete Carroll. I know.
There you go. So yeah. So now Lincoln Riley, let's see what he's going to do, because you got a slate of games, Lincoln Riley. You're going with you're going to play number 5 Washington at home. The next week you're going to play number 6 Oregon on the road, and then you finish off the season against number 19 UCLA at home. No other team in college football has a more difficult slate. And should USC get through that gauntlet, they'll get a bye week and have to play another ranked team in the Pac-12 championship. So you got one loss. USC against no loss Washington, the first and second place teams in the Pac-12, going at it at the Coliseum, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on ABC. Pickles, I appreciate you joining us here on the premiere episode of the Tailgate on Trojans Talk on Tap. We had some technical difficulties, but like in this game, you have to make adjustments. There's going to be issues that you're not going to see, that you can prepare for, that are not going to happen. It's whoever makes those adjustments and carries through will win this game. So last words, Pickles?
I think it's going to be a fun one. I hope it doesn't give me as much anxiety as that Oregon game did, but I'm looking forward to it. Go Dogs.
All right. Fight on, Pickles, and may the best team win. We'll be looking forward to watching on Saturday. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Right on.